All right, good day. This is Christopher Emge from the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce Success School doing another career video, this one with Matt Neer on library sciences. Matt, how are you this morning? And could you give a little bit of your name, title, position, and all that good stuff?
Sure, I'm doing well. My name is Matt Neer. I am the assistant manager for community and customer engagement here at the Monroe County Public Library.
And what led you to a career in library science?
Sure, I actually fell in a little bit backwards into library sciences. I think probably like a lot of people, I didn't realize being a librarian required a master's in library science. So in my more reckless youth, I was applying for PhD programs in English literature and saw that there's also a master's in library science being offered at Indiana University. So I ended up hopping onto that, becoming disenchanted with academia to some degree, and fell in love with my program in library sciences. To the point where I got a position working at the reference desk over at the Wells Library, and my shift was 9 p.m. to midnight, and so I would sit at a desk mostly by myself, and anybody could come in, a graduate student, undergrad, faculty, and they could ask me any question about any subject, and it was my responsibility to try and figure out how to answer it or point them into the best resources to answer that. And it really like turned a switch in my brain, which was like, A, I love helping people, and B, I love research and information seeking. And both of those meshing together so pleasantly just set me off into the path of librarianship.
And what type of people, what sort of skill sets do you think of when you think of people in library science? You talked about the helping aspect, but what are some of the other things?
I think curiosity, I think a love of information, seeking information. People that are in this profession, we're not doing it for the money, we're doing it because we have a passion for the people that we serve. Librarianship spreads across a lot of different avenues. So some of my colleagues that I went to graduate school with now are archivists. So they work in museums or other institutions, historical institutions that need people to manage and curate the content and data that they have to preserve the histories of their institutions. There's academic librarians who are a lot of support and a lot of, they do a lot more in research than I would do here. Public librarians, which is my chosen profession and field, is the one I can speak to the most about, and that is just a strong desire to be a part and be a support element for the community that you serve in. It's really lovely how much you get to really try and affect change in the community and respond to the needs of the community that you're in.
What are some of the challenges you have in, let's just go back to the academic one of some of the classes you might need to be taking here, some of the hurdles just to get to the point where you can apply to something like where you're at currently?
Sure. So a degreed librarian requires a master's in library science, or not a degreed librarian, but an official librarian, especially if you want to move into management positions, is typically requires that. But we have lots of amazing staff members here who don't have a master's in library science, but do a lot of similar work where they work at the service point desks. They can initiate programs and projects. There's lots of opportunities to work in a library, even without a library science degree. So you can really buy into the mission of it. But if your passion is graphic design, then there's opportunities for you. Lots of libraries. Librarians aren't by nature good marketers. We want professionals for that. So we have an amazing graphic design team, and not just graphic design, but marketing team here at the library.
And how big is Monroe County Library? I mean, you got 2 outlets right now, a third one in being probably built by the end of
being planned right now. We've got the main library in Bloomington. We've got the branch library in Ellettsville. We have a very robust bookmobile and van delivery service that really helps support daycares, senior and assisted living facilities, We are as out there as much as possible and as accessible as possible, which is one of the things that really drives us is accessibility. So that's why we've reopened a couple weeks ago, is because we want to make sure that our services are accessible, because at the end of the day, our support is coming from the community. So we're sort of beholden to that community to make sure that we're giving them the best service we can possibly do.
With, and speak to you both, you as a director and the library in general, what are some of the challenges libraries face on a day-to-day level, and maybe long-term financing, or some things that are a little bit make your job a little bit more complicated than people might think?
Sure. So I'll speak more to my traditional level of librarianship. I've only been in management for about a year now, somewhere around there. I came up as an adult services librarian, so my job was to serve the adult communities within the libraries that I worked for. And that can be a challenge. Every library is different and reflective of who they're serving and what the needs are. I know my focus here when I started was there's a traditional gap in library usage. People typically drop off about when they become teenagers and get cars and can go wherever. And then they come back when they start having families and they have kids, and they want access to children's books, to storytelling programs and things like that. So there's a pretty big gap between 16, 17, 18, and mid to late 20s that I was seeing, and is sort of a historical thing for library services. So one of the things that myself and another colleague did when we started here was to start doing programs for people in their 20s and early 30s to try and reach an audience that we historically haven't really reached. But just like everything else, it can be tricky, and you have to sort of be creative and experimental, let things fail and let things flourish. Things that really succeeded for us, from my perspective, I did a science fiction book club that focused on diverse authors. That went really well. We did Nerd Night, which is a bigger event where we have 3 or so speakers talk about their passionate areas, their places where they're really dedicated into researching and learning about. So we had people talk about feminism and bowling, about the history of medieval astrology or astronomy, the science of whale music, like these really interesting deep dives into something. And I'd sit at the back of, we hosted these at bars, at local bars, because that's where we knew our audience was going to be.
Okay.
I'd see 60, 70 folks all like sitting there learning, and I would just be, in the background, like, all you fools are coming here to learn from us. Like, this is the way we reach you. We provide these information resources, but we do it in the way that our audience wants. And that was really, really rewarding from a librarian perspective.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, this sort of starting something from scratch and kind of making it your own. What are some misconceptions people might have about you and your profession?
Oh, I mean, we struggle against sort of the common library stereotype, which is we sit at a desk, we read all day, it's quiet. It's not the case, but it's a really strong stereotype, and it's really it's been a difficult one to contend with. The best thing to do is just come and visit a library. In our more open format, we have Level Up, which is an amazing spot on the first floor of the library where you can go in and get access to the full Adobe Creative Suite. You can record music, you can record videos. And people aren't super quiet in there. It's a nice place to be able to get access to high technology, really powerful stuff that is probably cost prohibitive for most of us, myself included. We also have an amazing teen space on the first floor as well. You can go down there as a teen and hang out, mess around and geek out, which is principles developed by a Chicago Public Library. And that is an amazing place that if I had that as a teenager, I would be so stoked to be in the library every day because it's fantastic. But yeah, we're always branching out and trying to some degree combat the stereotype, but we're also just trying to find more ways to unfold ourselves within the community.
So you've seen sort of how library spaces have evolved into just more community space. Where do you see your field going here in the next 10 years if you could get your Swami hat on?
I don't think there's one unified direction, which is sort of weird to say because I'm trying to speak more generally as a representative of librarianship, but I think every different community is going to be a little bit different. I came up at a very rich suburban community library in Chicago. I started as a digital creativity librarian. So I built a big editing studio, and that studio ended up being a place where the older community members could come in and digitize resources. So I got to sit and hang out with people that were like listening to audio from a vinyl record they haven't heard in decades, or see a VHS tape play of like their child playing around when they were 20 years ago. That was really powerful. I took those same skills to Eugene, Oregon, and we made a similar studio that allowed people to record their music, as well as engage in 3D printing and digital manufacturing. So even the same skill set is implemented diversely wherever you go. It just sort of matters. I know right here at Monroe County Public Library, we've got a lot of really cool initiatives that I think are having big impacts on the library. One of my colleagues started a program through an internal grant to help support people that are victims of domestic violence. And so it was a way to help give them access to library resources and library support. And that was a partnership with Middleway House, which is another big important institution in Monroe County. So we sort of leverage and build off of each other to create an ecosystem of support for everyone else.
And we get into more details, and this is very fascinating, but give some advice for students interested in kind of going to this field. And is there any volunteer opportunities at the library that might help them along that career path if they're thinking about library sciences?
Sure. There's actually a lot of colleagues here who started at the library when they were in high school or just getting out of high school. We have a lot of college students that work for us as shelvers. We actually have a fair amount of people who work here as shelvers or information assistants while they're also pursuing their master's in library science. A lot of us who are librarians have an undergraduate degree in English literature or history. So, I mean, if you want to be a librarian, pursue your passion in whatever area you're interested in. A lot of my background is in digital creativity, and that really served me well to get my first few jobs in librarianship. So think about ways to leverage your personal interests into how you can expand on that to serve and support other people. And then, think about where you want to go for your master's degree and work towards getting that. But get as much experience as you can, offer to volunteer for your local library, look for positions. There's a good chance of finding a position to become a shelver, which is such a vital position at the library. If we didn't have people that shelve books, we would be in dire straits. So every position is so important at the library, and any experience you have knowing the culture and supporting the mission of a public library is going to be such a boon to you getting a job at a public library in the future.
Well, great, Matt. I know you've made me interested in going into library science. Maybe I've made the wrong career path, or maybe I just have another possibility as a second act. But I thank you for your time this morning learning about all you do in this digital world that you've sort of created in the library, which is very fascinating. Well, we'll see everybody next time, and thank you for tuning in.